So, welcome everyone to another episode of The Bandwidth. I am your host, Rosie. So excited to be with you guys again. We have another great show. Some really quick housekeeping items. If you're not following us, please definitely follow us on Faulkner_Rosie at IG. If you're not subscribed to this YouTube channel, please subscribe and hit that notification bell so you can be alerted every time we post something new. If you know one person that could benefit from this episode, please share it with them. And also comment your biggest takeaway down below in the comment section. I love to engage with you there. So let's dive right into this topic today. The name of this particular live is how to build or kill your credibility. Again, so many of us are going live or trying to do so, and you definitely have to be able to have credibility. So we have Rokita here with us tonight. She is a certified world-class speaking coach, you guys. So let's welcome her to The Bandwidth. Welcome, Rokita.
Thank you, Rosie.
Yes, I know I gave a brief description about you, but can you give us a little bit more of your background? Tell us a little bit more about your background.
Absolutely. So, like you said, I am a certified world-class speaking coach. I am also an e-speaker certified virtual presenter. I am also a co-author of Speak Up, The Ultimate Guide to Dominate in the Speaking Industry, a book that was done with the Black Speakers Network. So an awesome book for those who would like to start off by increasing your speaking skills, or maybe you want to be a professional speaker. It's a great resource. I hail from Bridgeport, Connecticut, and I got started in public speaking because, like a lot of people, I didn't want to look like an idiot on my job when I had to lead team meetings. I went from a position where I was not that visible to one where I was a bit more visible. And I said, I need to increase my public speaking skills, communication skills overall. So that's when I joined Toastmasters years ago, and I started doing speech competitions. I really just honed my skill over time. People just started asking me to help them, and it became something that it wasn't just a skill I wanted to develop, but it became a real passion of mine. When you can speak well, you can deliver a message. So that's really important. And here I am today.
Yeah. And it's funny that you said Toastmasters, because I remember doing the same thing, wanting to, be able to deliver and speak to a crowd without being nervous. I also, I'm a church person. So I went to church and started doing the welcome, anything that could possibly help me with my public speaking. So it's funny how, a lot of people try different things to try to get over that nervousness and gain that confidence. So.
Absolutely. It's when you realize that you have a problem, that's the first step. Like, I need to get help for it. And that's what I did. But who knew that it would turn into something I would grow to love? Because a lot of people, they do public speaking because they have to do it. That's just the reality. But if you're going to do something, you want to do it well, regardless.
Absolutely. So why is it so important to prepare a script before you go live?
That's a great question. And I often like to tell people, would you want to be represented by a lawyer who did not do any type of due diligence or prepare any arguments ahead of time before you went to court? They're just pulling anything out of thin air, talking to the judge and the jury. No, you absolutely would not. It would be a disaster. And it's the same thing with public speaking. I don't care if you are speaking in the boardroom, if you are pitching for business, if you are giving a speech at a club that you're involved in or an organization, you have to know what you are going to be saying ahead of time. You can't hit a target that you didn't set ahead of time that you can't see. So one error that is going to happen, one mistake, if you do not prepare your script, your speech ahead of time, is that you're going to ramble. So when you see those people who probably had 20 minutes to speak and here it is 40 minutes, that is someone who did not prepare properly. Maybe they wrote a few things out, but they really didn't practice. They really didn't write the meat out of what they needed to say. What was the main point of them getting up there and speaking at this event? That's what you will see with someone who did not prepare ahead of time. They're going to ramble. They're going to go off in tangents. You are going to kill your credibility that way. One big thing with people who are event organizers is that they do want you to stay within time. That is a big thing. No one ever complained about someone who ended 5 or 10 minutes early, but you go over and you are just going to get on someone's bad side. You're going to disrupt the whole flow of the event. So it's a respect thing there too. So there are a few reasons why you want to prepare a script, but it's mainly because you do want to come off as speaking in a cohesive, structured manner. You don't want to ramble. You don't want to go off in tangents. You don't want to go over time. You need to have your thoughts put together ahead of time.
Yeah. And I also find that you're less nervous too when you're prepared. You're more confident because you've taken that time to, sort out everything, make sure everything is right. Of course, anything could go wrong, but that is one thing that you have prepared for. So I find that the more prepared I am, the more confident I am.
You hit the nail on the head. And that's exactly what I tell my clients. I say, it's really not so much that you're afraid of the speaking part. That's not the problem. The problem is preparing. That's what takes the most work. If you prepare, you're not going to feel as nervous when you do have to speak. Now, a little bit of anxiety is okay. A little bit of nervousness, that can be all right. If that gives you the extra juice, that extra boost of energy when you're doing your presentation. But if you did not prepare at all, you are going to feel anxious. You cannot wing it. And I hear that commonly with people. They say, well, I want to come off natural. I want to naturally shine through. So I kind of just wing it when I'm up there. And I'm like, you know what else happens when you wing it? Just like I said before, you're going to ramble. We don't care how great your personality is if you're rambling and you're keeping us here past time.
And that's so true. I guess, I don't know why the rapper Jay-Z came off in my head because, he goes off the top of his head. But I guess, rapping and speaking is two different things. You definitely need to know what you're going to say. And I guess that is, so what do you tell a client that still feels that they want to do it that way and they feel that they're not going to ramble? Do you just be like, okay, try it?
Well, no, I'm going to ask them, so how's that been working for you so far? Because you came to me for help. You knew something was wrong. You came to me for a reason. If you thought you were doing great, you would not have sought out my services. So it's just being real. And one of the first things that I do when I have a client is I have them establish their goals. That is going to determine what do we need to work on the rest of our time together. Because you can't tell me you're working on 8 different goals. If you're honest with yourself, you know exactly what you need to work on. And if you know that you are winging it, you have to be honest with me in that session, because then we'll know what we need to work with you on and how we can help you improve that. So you can wing it if you want, but you paying me to help you. I know you want to improve.
No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, that's it. I was just saying that you're paying me for help here. So not being honest, wanting to ramble is not helping you or me. None of us wants to waste our time. And I know you don't want to waste money. So ramble if you want, but why did you come to me for help? You're not going to be able to get booked for future speaking engagements if you're going on in this way. If you continue on in that way, it's not going to serve you in the end.
Yeah. And what would you say is the most people challenge when they come to you? Is it just being the fear? Is it the rambling? What exactly is it that you see that people struggle with the most?
I will tell you, it is fear. Number one, that's one thing I hear. And then the other most common one is I need to be more concise. I love that. They know that I'm talking too long. And talking too long, again, that's tied to preparation, because once they tell me that, when I have that discovery call with them, I will say, okay, I want you to tell me, what is your preparation process? I want you to walk me through that. What does that look like for you? Do you establish what is the goal of this presentation? What's the big goal here? The bottom line message. Then what are the major points that I need to talk about? How many points you're going to have in it is obviously going to be determined by how much time you have to speak to begin with. So you can't, someone is not going to tell you have 10 minutes to speak and you have 8 points prepared. You are sabotaging yourself. So managing nervousness and being concise, saying what you need to say, saying it in the most efficient amount of words, the most economical way, those are the two biggest things that I hear when people come to me for help.
Okay. And how do you start off strong with your message?
There's a few ways you can start off strong, and how I describe it to my clients is, we need to start off with a bang, okay? Not a whimper, but a bang. And when I say a bang, I mean, you have to get the audience's attention from the gate. You can't wait a whole minute into your presentation to really try to rein them in. Why? Because attention spans are very short these days. They're getting shorter by the moment. And especially in this virtual environment where you are competing with people's distractions, okay? People have children that were home for a good amount of time. They were doing their schoolwork. People are trying to do their own work. The telephone is ringing. A text message came through. They could easily click to another tab and go to Facebook while you're just talking. You really have to start off strong to keep people engaged in what you're saying. So a few ways that you can do that are, number one, you could ask a question. That's something that's very common, but what people don't realize is that the brain is hardwired to want to answer a question. So it's not you just asking a frivolous question. You want to ask something that is thought-provoking for someone, that is really going to get their brain going. So they may not come up with the answer that you're thinking of, but at least it will provoke them to think about what you are asking them. The brain wants to answer. So you can start off with a question. Another way that you can start off strong is with a story. Who does not love a story? Adults are big kids in that sense. We have never outgrown a story. Think about when your cousin or your best friend comes over. Girl, let me tell you such and such. You are ready for it immediately. You're ready to hear this. Whatever it is, you are all ears. So a story is a great way to start off. Another way that you can start off is with a startling statistic or fact, something that people really have not heard. There are statistics out there, of course, but what is something that's maybe not as common? There are things we hear all the time, a statistic about this or the percentage of that. What is something that would genuinely spark people's interest that is not as commonly known? And if you are an expert in your field, you most likely have this information. You know something that this audience does not know. So throw it out there. Don't wait until you are into the body of your speech to want to rein in the audience. You have to start off strong. I don't want you starting off by saying, hey, I'm so glad to be here. Isn't the weather great? That's boring. It's not that it's bad, but it's boring. And you want people to be in a mode of what I call unexpectation. They're not expecting what you're about to hit them with to rein them in. So you have to start off strong to keep people's attention.
Yeah. And I agree with everything you said, because like you said, attention spans are just, very short. So I definitely agree with hitting them from the beginning. And then, I guess the next thing would be, just trying to figure out, like you said, what your audience would want to hear. I guess that would be the next challenge. But like you said, if you know your topic and your subject matter, you should be able to figure that out and start off strong. So yeah.
Absolutely. And I mean, if you're booked for some speaking engagement, and obviously the event organizer booked you for a specific reason, they have some type of theme that you are going to be speaking on because this is your area of expertise. But if you want to get even more specific so that you can hit home with the audience, what they want to know, you can always have a survey go out ahead of time. That's a great way to ask the audience, hey, what are the top 3 things that you really want to get out of this presentation that's coming up in 2 weeks? What is a burning question that you have about this topic? It may possibly get answered on the stage or behind the computer screen. So it never hurts to send out a survey as well. Or the event organizer, they can tell you what are the most pressing things, what are the hot buttons that you need to touch on, the issues that will really help the audience, maybe with clarity, new knowledge, all of that. So there are ways to connect with the audience on exactly what they want to know.
Okay. And I'm glad you did give examples for that, because it is hard sometimes to, gauge what the audience want to hear, but it just seems like it's a no-brainer, but it is like eggs. But so many people, you sit there and you struggle with it when you could ask the question. And then the next thing you hear, well, it's crickets when I ask. Well, you have to keep asking so you know that you're delivering what your audience wants. So I agree with that. Yeah. So what are hedger words?
Hedger words. Hedger words are words that you use that make you sound uncertain. And these are words that usually I find women usually use. Some men do, but I just find it more common with women. So these are words such as just. I just want to tell you, or I just want to know. Might. You might want to probably. This probably may sound like, in a vacuum, these words are not bad here and there. But when you are repeatedly saying them as you're speaking, people do start to pick up on that. And it's not just when you're speaking, it's also in the written form as well. When you are sending email communications, these words do crop up, the just, might, probably. It can really start to chip away at your credibility over time. So this is one of those easier ways that you can make sure that you're not knocking yourself out of the game, so to speak, before you even start. So you really want to make sure that you're not using those hedger words. You don't want to sound like you aren't certain the whole time. You don't want to get branded in that way. So it's really important to think about the words, literally what words you're saying before they come out of your mouth. And again, here and there sprinkled throughout your talks, they're not bad, but you just don't want something to become a habit, because the audience will pick up on it and it will almost become like a block for them. They will hear the words and not your message, and you don't want that.
So would you say practice makes perfect with that? Just, just be knowledgeable. Just be, what word I can't even say. Just be conscious. I'm sorry. Just be conscious of that. And then it will work itself out. And what also I would also say is like watching your replays too. I stress that a lot to our audience. And then you could pick up on some of those things too that you're doing and just be conscious of it as you move forward.
Absolutely. The first step in solving a problem is knowing what is that word that I'm using, if there is a word. So you have to figure out what that is first. And a good way to see what that is yes, you need to watch your recordings. I know a lot of people, even professional speakers, hate to watch themselves on video because it does feel awkward. We are harder on ourselves than other people are. That could be a good thing almost, because it makes us have to practice that much harder so that we can improve ourselves the next time we do have to speak. But recording yourself, watching the Zoom. Even when you're practicing, practice into your phone. You don't need anything fancy. A lot of people have smartphones these days. Record yourself and listen. See if you can pick up on any of these hedger words that you may be using. Maybe it's not a hedge word. Maybe it's a crutch word, like, like, so. Basically, literally, those are two newer words I see people use often, basically and literally. So we want to be careful about those words that we're using that the audience will pick up on, because they're like empty calories. They don't serve any purpose. They just don't.
Yes. And then to move on to something that a lot of people struggle with is being their authentic self, without like hurting their credibility. It's like right now, everybody is, so quick to cancel someone. But how do you balance that with being your authentic self?
Well, there's a few things that come to mind when I think about being your authentic self and keeping your credibility as a speaker. Number one, your experiences and your stories, your expertise, all of that. Because there are people who might speak on the same things that you do. Like, how many dating coach experts are there out here? There are so many people who speak on relationships. Why would you say, oh, I'm not going to speak on this because Steve Harvey talks about this? Well, no, everybody brings their own perspective to it is the thing. So what you've been through, what you've experienced, maybe what you've studied through college courses, this all plays into who you are. Your whole being, your knowledge, that really is part of who you are. That is helping your authenticity. No one else can do what you do like you do. So I would say just being cognizant of that. What do you bring to the table that really helps with your credibility? Being someone who you are not, that's going to knock your credibility right there. So sometimes when people are first starting to speak, they will say, oh, I want to be the next Les Brown or the next Lisa Nichols. They are amazing speakers. They are known all over the world. But guess what? You are you. There is no one like you in the world. There is something new and fresh that you are bringing to the scene. So while there are qualities about other speakers you may admire, you never want to be a carbon copy. Who wants to hire the carbon copy? No one. People want the original. They want the real thing. So you have to think about that. You bring something special to your space, to your topic, and you just need to be aware of that and walk in confidence with that. There are a lot of people that may talk about what you do, but they can't do it like you. They can't. From your tone of voice to your mannerisms, all of this plays a part in it. And you want to be the best version of yourself. Whatever or whoever you are, just be that best version. It's not about being somebody that you're not to feel like, oh, I need to come off as professional. You can be professional, but be yourself too, whatever that is. And that's why people will work with someone like me, because I'm not trying to change who you are, but we need to figure out what you are doing. How do we make it work for you?
Yeah. And so many people struggle with imposter syndrome. And I honestly think that it just takes a while for you to just keep doing it and figuring it out, because you have to have that confidence. And so many people lack it when they first start off. Like with anything, you're unsure. So I definitely agree with what you said. Just, figure it out. I mean, you only can be an imposter for so long. Your true self often leaks out anyway. Just say if you're a cursor and you don't, like, it's going to come out eventually. So, like, just be your own self. So that's what
exactly. It's too much energy trying to be something that you're not. It's not going to work after a while. It's like telling lies. You have to keep remembering what the lie was. The truth, you don't have to remember.
Yeah. Now, how do you know when you have built good credibility?
There are a couple ways that come to mind. Number one, when you are hearing the same good feedback after you have events, I do recommend that when you have some type of speaking engagement, it's good to get a survey to ask the audience what they thought about you in the presentation. That's a good way, number one, to gauge how the audience, how they perceived you. So that's one way. And then another way is as far as how many events are you starting to get booked for? That shows you that your credibility is starting to build. People are noticing you. You have some type of expertise that people are hiring you for over and over again in that space. That tells you right there, you are starting to arrive. Your name is getting known. That's a good thing. That shows that your credibility is starting to build.
Yeah. And so, is it any other tips that we should know that I didn't, ask about?
I would say, I feel like there are a few things. We did talk about the crutch words. We talked about preparation. That's a big thing for me. But you do have to know your audience. I don't care if you give the same speech over and over again, you're not speaking to the same audience. That's a big thing with speakers. You have to tailor your speech, your presentation to that specific audience. So if this is a group of men in one audience versus a group of women, there are certain things you might do differently, like certain examples or stories that you tell, they might, what's the word I'm looking for? They might ring truer for women or be more well received than with, the male audience. It depends on the age demographic as well. It depends on the level of knowledge that people already have about your topic. That tells you how deep or how shallow you need to go into depth about something there. So you have to know who your audience is. No matter if you've given this speech 100 times before, this 101th time, you need to figure out, how do I tailor it to this group so that they can connect with it? You have to. It's like a teacher who's teaching students. Somebody will get it quicker than the other, and that teacher will notice that child who may not be understanding the lesson as well. So they'll try to find different ways to teach that child. So I want speakers to think about that as well. It really starts with the audience. I would say that's a big thing right there. You might have your signature speech. That's great. But what about a different example, or maybe there's a different story you can add to it that will resonate better with this particular audience? So virtual skills as well. If I'm thinking about other things you need to think about, there are a lot of people who are very comfortable on the big stage, but when they had to pivot to speaking virtually, that was like a deer in the headlights situation for a lot of speakers. They may have used Zoom or GoToMeeting or some other virtual platform occasionally, but virtual is not exactly like when you're speaking in person. There are different things you do have to think about. Some people are not used to looking directly into a camera because they feel like, I'm not looking at anyone. I'm telling a joke. When I'm telling a joke in person, I hear them laugh. I see their smiling faces. This feels weird when I am doing it virtually. So they had to account for those little things that are different. Even the clothes that you wear, you are going to be more mindful of them virtually. You're not going to wear something that's very low cut that someone cannot see. Right now I have a blazer on, I do have a top on, but if you just had a totally sleeveless top, that's going to come across like you might not have any clothes on. You don't want to do that. Even certain clothes that have patterns on them, sometimes those prints can look like they're dancing to the audience. So that's something to be aware of. Polka dots or stripes or checks. You might want to get on Zoom or whatever virtual platform that you use and just test it out with someone. Ask them, how do my clothes come across to you? Does it look like they're moving a little? Do my clothes look distracting? Because that's what you don't want. Are they distracting or everything coming across fine? They will tell you that. So I always recommend you have to look at your clothes. That's something that we have to care for even more so virtually. So it's just little tips like that. Being aware of not being a talking head when you're on Zoom. I don't know, but if you've seen those people who it's like literally their body is not there and it's just a head and you're like, where did the rest of your body go? So you have to think about all this. You could still have mannerisms on Zoom. You should be using your hands. You should have facial expressions. You almost have to be more amplified on Zoom than when you are in person. You can stand up if you want. There's nothing against that. You can stand up, especially if you're giving a keynote speech. I do recommend that you stand up versus if, like me, if you're just doing an interview or maybe you're giving a technical type of speech where you really don't have to stand for something like that. But these are all things that you have to care for in this new world that we live in.
So a question. So why should you be more animated on Zoom versus on the stage? I would think it would be equally. So I want to hear your take on it.
You want to be animated in both spaces, but what I'm finding is sometimes when people are on Zoom, it's almost like they become muted. They're given the presentation, but it's almost a watered down version of themselves. I'm not sure if it's because they're so focused on wanting to give good content, to give a good presentation, that they almost forget to bring your whole self. People don't think about it as much when they're on the stage. You have the audience there. You have cues that they're giving you. You're making eye contact with people, but it's different when you're behind the camera. It's different when you just have to look in the lonely barrel of that camera. We forget that there's an audience there. So if I'm giving a speech and I'm telling a story and something exciting happens in that story, why would I want to talk like this when I'm giving the story? I don't want to talk in the same monotone voice, expressionless face the entire time. No, people don't think about that. They don't do that when they're in person because they're so used to that. They know what they need to do. But you need to do this when you're on Zoom as well. And sometimes they just can seem more muted just naturally when we're behind the camera. Your makeup can seem muted for example. So that's why even newscasters, they say to exaggerate your makeup, because if it's muted, the people watching TV, it looks like you have nothing on. It's almost the same thing when you're a speaker. You really have to make sure that your face is matching up with your words, that your personality is showing through. So it's just being conscious of it. You need it for both in person, you need it for virtual, but I think more people just forget about it a little bit more when they're virtual.
Yeah. And I know a lot of another thing that confuses people is like what camera they're looking to. If you're on Zoom, do you look down at, the screen? Do you look at the camera? If you look at the camera, then you can't see the screen. It's just, it trips people up. So that's one thing that a lot of people had to adjust to as well. And then you're not thinking about your message because you're concentrating. Wait, am I looking in the lens? It's just so that is what
more work in a way. It's more work in a way. That's what I tell people. It's not that's going to be less work. It's more work in a sense. You have to have equipment for one. You have to invest in good equipment. That's a cost right there. So it's just more forethought that goes into it.
Yeah. So what's next for you?
Well, besides a personal level, besides my trip to Miami tomorrow for my cousin's wedding, I do have a training coming up next month on May 8th. It's my VIP training, which stands for Virtual Impactful Presenting. So that teaches people how to use the features of Zoom a lot better. Zoom is still an animal that people are trying to master. They might know some of the basics, but Zoom is very dynamic and they are coming up with new things basically every 2 weeks. So there's always something to learn. So I'm going to be teaching my participants what are the basics of it. What are some engagement techniques that you can use when you have a presentation, whether you're giving a formal speech or you're leading some type of workshop or meeting? Here are some suggestions for how to make it more lively. Also, what can you do as far as looking and sounding your best, which are some things that we discussed today. So what's the equipment that's out here right now? What should you be using? How do you look your best? And Zoom has a lot of features that are actually built in to help us look our best that people don't even realize are there. So these are things that we're going to be talking about. PowerPoint design. If you're using a deck, that's another big thing. We could talk about that in a whole separate conversation, but you got to have a PowerPoint deck that is not going to bore people to death and make their eyes want to glaze over. So we talk about how do you design that. So that's what's going to be included in my training next month, which again is coming up on May
8th. Okay. And how can people stay connected with you?
Sure. So I am on Instagram at Rokita Johnson _public speaking. I'm also on LinkedIn. I also have a Facebook page, which is just under my name, Rokita Johnson Public Speaking. Although I am on Instagram more, I'll admit, I just have more interaction there. That's where the people seem to be. So I'm there as well. You can also take a look at my website, www.rokitajohnson.com.
Thank you so much, Rokita. This has been great. I'm sure that our audience will benefit from this. I know I got some nuggets too. So thanks again for being on the bandwidth.
Thank you so much for having me, Rosie. I appreciate it.
So again, you guys, if you're not subscribed to our channel, please make sure that you subscribe. If you have one biggest takeaway from this episode, please make sure that you share it down in the comment section. I would love to engage with you. And if you know one person that could benefit from this conversation, definitely share it with them. Also follow us over on IG, Faulkner_Rosie. We would love to talk with you there. And if you are ready to go live, definitely pick up my 3 must-have tools for going live. It will be a link down in the description box. So until next week, we will be back with another great episode of The Bandwidth. See you then.